Hello, parishioners. Day 62 of the Bible in a Year, and we're looking at chapter 12 and 13 of the book of Numbers first. And chapter 12 has that powerful story about how Miriam was punished with leprosy because she and Aaron had complained about Moses, and they were criticizing Moses for his marriage with a Cushite woman, and so this is kind of perhaps a warning against speaking out against, well, maybe shouldn't speak badly about the Pope or about the bishop or about the priest or the pastor or the leader. There's a certain hierarchy in the church, and Moses represents that, and so we can see how God defends his leaders, and yet the beautiful story about how Aaron pleaded and said, No, oh my Lord, do not punish us. And he begged his brother Moses to heal her, so these are powerful words. He says, let her not be as one dead, like a dead person. This leprosy disease is so terrible, or like the flesh of a baby that comes out, a miscarriage, half consumed from its mother's womb. Terrible imagery, but of course this beautiful healing that miraculously happens for Miriam. Chapter 13 has this story of the spies that were sent. Verse 1 says that the Lord told Moses to send men to spy, but it is interesting that it seems that maybe the Lord told Moses to do it because previously, as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 22 and 23 and 24, it says that it was the people who requested it, the Israelites, as they got closer to the land of Canaan, and they were getting worried because they're going to have to go in and fight, even though they're not soldiers. They said, let's go spy and let's go check it out before we go in there. And so it probably was these Israelites who were getting cold feet. Here they are marching into Canaan to take it, to go up and seize the land, as God had ordered them or told them and promised them that would happen. But they instead kind of chicken out, and they get cold feet, and they want to send spies. And so anyway. It's hard to know, whose idea was it to send spies. It seems that it was the Israelites who were getting a little worried and afraid. And so what happened in this book of Numbers, this is very pivotal, this chapter 13, because when they sent spies and found out that the land is so rich and such fierce, giant people living in it, and they brought back some of the fruit of the land, there was a cluster of grapes that was so big they had to carry it on a pole between two men. This amazing promised land. They went, as it says in verse 25, for 40 days. For 40 days they reconnoitered the land, and they spied the land, and then they said, no, we can't do it. We can't do it. We cannot conquer this land. But Caleb was the one. He's the representative who went in, the spy who represented the tribe of Judah, and he quieted the people, as it says in verse 30. And he says, surely we can do it. Let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it. So he had this confidence. My sister, who lives in South Carolina, named one of her sons Caleb. So I like that story because it's a beautiful story. This Caleb was courageous and said, we can do it. But the others refused, and so the punishment was that because they had, we're going to see later, that because they had reconnoitered for 40 days, they were going to be condemned to wander for 40 years. So 38 more years they're going to have to wander in the desert. So that's the rest of the book of Numbers, is the fact that they're going to have to wander for some more years as a punishment for the fact that they got from Sinai to Canaan pretty quickly, but they refused, or they failed to go in and conquer it. And so the punishment was that they had to travel around, wandering in the wilderness for 38 more years, and until all those lily-livered, fearful, scaredy cats, fearful ones, died out. That generation, that first generation, so rebellious, murmuring and complaining all the time, they died off. And so it was the second generation who were finally able to enter the promised land. This book of Numbers tells the story of their adventures in the Sinai wanderings in real time. It kind of tells it as it's happening. We now go to the book of Deuteronomy, which is, they say, kind of after the fact. It's telling the same story, but in the past tense. So Moses is, in the plains of Moab, recalling and telling the stories, recalling some of the events that happened during the wanderings, and giving them a last sermon with some extra laws that they were going to need because they were so rebellious, and they needed special kind of alternative laws. A second law, Deuteronomy, which is what that means. Second law. And so now we get here to chapter 11, and Moses is speaking to the people, and he's talking to the people about how now we're going to go into this promised land in Canaan, and as you go there, don't forget the Lord. Don't forget all the things he's done for you, his mighty deeds, how he overcame Egypt and Pharaoh and such, and also consider the discipline of the Lord your God. So God disciplined out of love for his beloved firstborn son, Israel. His beloved was treated strictly because of his love for them. In verse 8, there's a beautiful words saying that if you keep these commandments, loving God and keeping the commandments, that you may grow strong and go in and take possession and live long in the land. And it's a land of milk flowing with milk and honey. It says, it is not like the land of Egypt. And then in verse 11 and 12, it speaks about rain. It's not going to be like Egypt, which is like a desert place, and you had to work hard as slaves to get it to be irrigated and make the things grow. But this land is going to be just so wonderful, as it says here beautifully. It says, this is a land of hills and valleys which drinks water by the rain from heaven, a land which the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Such a beautiful description of the Holy Land. Makes you want to go on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. The next verse 13, continues that idea. If you obey my commandments and serve God with all your heart and soul, he will give the rain for your land in its season, the early rain and the later rain. Now, my Bible, the Ignatius Study Bible, which just came out, beautiful giant Bible, it has a footnote on this verse 14. It says that in Palestine and in Israel, there are two rains, the early rains in October, November, so kind of in the fall. And the late rains came in the spring, in March and April. And so these are the rains that cause the growth, of course, and there was two harvests, in fact. The harvest season stretched from the spring, when they harvested wheat and barley, to the late summer, when they harvested grapes and olives. It's truly a land of great fertile harvest. But they say this allegory is that the early rains represent kind of the Old Testament, when God, sent blessings and prophets and knowledge of the law. And the late rains is the mystery of Christ, of course, in the church in the New Testament. So St. Gregory the Great spoke that way, that it's an allegory of all the blessings that the Lord poured down on God's people, especially in Israel.